Okay, so I want to just give you over a little bit about the mystical side of milk and meat. The mystical side of why we can't mix milk and meat together. If you look at the Torah says, a simple verse, it says, you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. That's really what all it shows up in the Torah. Torah doesn't say, do not mix milk and meat. It says, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. The oral tradition tells us, it says it in three places in the scriptures it's mentioned. So it says, why does it say 3 times? So it's one time to teach us not to cook it. There's a prohibition of cooking milk and meat, which many other prohibitions in kashrut. There's no prohibition of cooking pig. But milk and meat is a prohibition of cooking. That's one prohibition. You're not allowed to eat it, and you're also not allowed to derive any benefit from it. Okay, so you can't derive benefit from a mixture of milk and meat. For instance, you can't give a product of milk and meat to your cat or to your dog, because that's deriving benefit from that mixture. So not only are you not allowed to eat it, not only are you not allowed to cook it, but you're also not allowed to derive any benefit from it. But if you look clearly at what the Torah says, it says, you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. It almost seems like the reason is really implicit in the way the Torah writes it. What is it about milk and meat that we can't mix? It says, the kid in its mother's milk. So what's the kid? The kid is the meat. The milk is the life source for the kid, right? So you have a little kid, a little goat. That's a kid, right? A little goat, and the kid is how does it live? It lives off the mother's milk. So it almost seems like the Torah is saying there's something very wrong, something very inhumane about taking the kid, which is the child, and cooking it in its mother's milk, the source of life. And in many places in Kabbalah, it actually says that sort of is the reason. It's just like there are commandments of respecting God, and you shall not take God's name in vain. And you also have to honor your parents for the same reason, because there is the creator and there is creation. And they're not made to mix with each other. One has to respect the other. We don't have any incestuous relationships, because there are things that we just don't mix in life. So God is there to honor and respect. So we know there's a creator and there's creation. So that is the way we deal with God, and then the same thing with our parents, who are like our creators in some way, so they're God-like. Them too, we need to stay separate. We need to honor them. We need to revere them. We need to fear them. There needs to be a separation between the parent and the child. And that is all part of us respecting the Creator. So when the Torah says, you shall not mix milk and meat together, the milk is symbolic of the Creator, the source of life, and the kid is the creation. And the Torah says, no, don't mix the two together. You can't cook it, you can't eat it, you can't derive any benefit from its substance, from its mixture, because that is like incestuous, creator and creation, to mix the two together. And it doesn't actually say you can't cook the meat of the mother with the child. It's about the milk. Why? Because the milk is symbolic of that, of the way the parent is a parent, not just as a human. The parent, or not just as an animal. It represents the parenting part of the goat. The parenting part of the goat is the milk. So when you cook the milk with the kid, this is incestuous. This is the creator and creation being mixed one with the other. And therefore, from a spiritual point of view, it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful, dishonorable, and it's mixing up the order of creation. The order of creation is creator and creation need to be separated. When you walk into a synagogue, you have to give great honor to God. You can't eat chewing gum when you go into shul. You can't patchka around in shul. You can't jump around, dance around, unless it's a special simcha. But in shul, you can't talk. You have to be focused. It's God. You're in the house of God. You have to honor it. You have to stay distant from it and separate the two. In that way, you emphasize the honor and respect. In the same way, the Torah says, do not cook the kid in its mother's milk. So I've given you one explanation that's brought down in Kabbalah for mixing milk and meat. And now, I am going to tell you another explanation, which is out there. And that is another explanation for this prohibition of mixing milk and meat. Okay, but first, I'm going to tell you about something we discussed already last time in the split hoops, about that there are two sides. One is chesed, and one is gevura. There is kindness, and there is discipline. And we explained last week that kindness is very important, and discipline sometimes is very important. They're both very important ways that we relate to people, we relate to friends, we relate to spouses, and we relate especially how we relate to children. We need to be kind to our children. That's very important. That's called chesed. But sometimes there's a need to discipline them, and you can't be just totally kind with them, because they'll turn out to be spoiled brats. So we need to also give them a little bit of gevura, of justice, of discipline. At the same time, discipline itself, everybody agree that's not the main thing, the discipline. Discipline is just a means. The main thing that we try to accomplish is to be kind to our children, kind to our families. So there is chesed and there is gevura. We need both of those things. And they need to be blended and harmonized many times. But overall, kindness, chesed, is the key, is the most important thing. We need to be mostly kind and a little bit disciplined. That needs to be the main attribute that we need to focus on is not discipline. There needs to be discipline. It's a necessary balance to kindness, but that is not the main attribute. The main attribute is giving and sharing, which is chesed, which is kindness. And that is why the Torah tells us many commandments to be kind, to be helpful, to help the underdog, to help the sick and the invalid and the weak and the orphan and the widow. And Torah goes on and on about you shall open your hands and you shall surely help the poor. And I am a God of charity and kindness. You too shall do kindness. Torah speaks about that without end. That is the main attribute. And so we have this there. But we need to also have some balance with justice, with discipline. So if you could look at it at milk and meat, milk is white. In the Kabbalah, white is representative of kindness. It's not colored. It's just giving. And milk represents the flow of milk, of giving. The mother gives to the child. So, milk represents the relationship of kindness. Meat represents, is red. It's blood. It represents gvura. It represents justice. When you get angry at someone, or you say God is a God of, I get angry, my wrath, your face turns red. That's when you have gevura, you turn angry, red. So red meat is symbolic of gevura. It's bloody. It represents the wrath. It represents the discipline. So milk represents chesed, and gevura is represented by meat. So Torah says, don't mix the two. Sometimes you have to have a balance of the two. But let's not forget, what's most important is the chesed. But there has to be chesed and gevura, but they're sort of two separate channels. And we don't want the kindness to be diluted by the gevura. And the gevura, they're both very important. But they have to be, they're two attributes, two separate attributes of God. Now, what the Kabbalah says, and that is why, after you eat milk, you can have, shortly thereafter, you can eat meat. But after you have meat, you can't have milk. You have to wait for 6 hours. Most people wait 6 hours after they eat meat. That's the Jewish tradition, is after milk, you wash your mouth, or you wait an hour, and then you can have right away meat. Whereas after meat, you can't have milk for 6 hours. Well, why is that? How does it work that way? What is the spiritual side of that? So we have an idea which is brought down in halacha of tata gavar, that whatever is below is victorious, overpowers. So, for instance, in halacha, if something which is hot, which is cold, falls into a hot soup, so we say that the hot soup that's underneath, that overpowers the cold substance that's falling into it. And vice versa, if the bottom soup is cold and the top substance is hot, we say it loses itself in the bottom. So the bottom is victorious. It overpowers. So the same applies also when we eat milk or meat. If we first drink milk and then afterwards we take meat, right? So then it's not a problem, because milk represents chesed, kindness. So we've absorbed ourselves with kindness. We've drank milk, and then afterwards we have some meat. So the meat gets tamed by the kindness. So the kindness is the winner here. Whereas if it's the opposite way, if we ate a meat meal, we have to wait 6 hours. Why? Because the meat represents the severity, and then when the kindness will come, it will be overpowered by the severity, because the severity is already like present in the lower level in our system. So the kindness will be overpowered by severity, and that we don't want. We want that the severity should be tempered by the kindness. So therefore, the way to eat is to eat milk first, and then I'll eat the meat afterwards, and then the meat will be absorbed in the kindness, because kindness is the main thing we're looking for in this whole exercise. However, if we do it the other way around, if we eat first the meat and then we take the milk afterwards, that's the milk will then be, the kindness will be taken over by the meat. So this is an explanation of milk and meat, and that therefore it says do not mix the milk with meat, because one, there are two attributes that have to remain separate. After 6 hours they can mix. That means there has to be a waiting period. But overall, the goal over here is that chesed, that kindness, should be the dominant attribute that we try to encourage. Try to encourage that with our families, with our children, with all those that we love. And that is basically what we are talking about. And so I'm just going to just finish off. But tonight we all know is Hanukkah, right? I'm sure you all know, and won't forget. Tonight we have to light the menorah. We light the menorah after sunset, and after it gets darker already. And the idea of the light. So we also have this kind of a fight. See, it says that God creates light and He creates darkness. And so light is the chesed, is the kindness, right? And darkness is the severities of this world, right? We say that the severity of this world comes from a place of tzimtzum, of the diminishing of light, and that's where darkness comes from. Ultimately comes from the gevura of God. So in life, sometimes we have things going our way, and the way we like it, that's chesed. And then sometimes there is darkness in our life, that comes from gevura, that comes with punishment and justice and all those kind of qualities. So what is Hanukkah? Hanukkah is we light the candles. That's the overpowering of the light over darkness. That's what Hanukkah is about. It's chesed over gevura. It says one little, and the power of light is amazing. You could take one light and it dispels a whole room of darkness. But symbolically on Hanukkah, again, as Jews, we have darkness, and there's darkness in our life. That is not the main thing. The main thing is we focus on the light. That's why by Jews, Hanukkah is such an important holiday. We also on Erev Shabbos, we also light candles. This is the theme. Yes, we are aware that there's some darkness, but we need to bring light into the darkness. So the theme of when you light tonight the candles, for Hanukkah, you'll also think about milk and meat, and about how the milk has to be dominant over the meat. The kindness has to be dominant over over the severity. And going back to what we said at the beginning, this was what the Rabbi was writing that day on 9/11. He was writing a whole explanation of how to beat those that have, which is also an attribute. It's an attribute to be successful, and there's an attribute also to be aggressive and to move forward and to be progressive and to be determined to succeed in life. But that must always be tempered with ways of kindness and the morality and the decency and the balance of humanity. So whatever success we have in life, we also need to be it needs to be tempered with kindness. So this is what it's all about. And like we said, kindness is the main attribute, and it's reiterated again in all the Kashrus code. It's reiterated in the code about the fish. It's reiterated in the code of the milk and meat. And tonight we're going to think about that when we light the candles. Think about bringing kindness into your world, into your life. What kind of, there's a lot of people that are living now in darkness. They're there all alone at home. It's very sad. We still don't have our vaccine yet in place, and people are in a place of darkness. Darkness is not always darkness outside. You could have darkness in your soul. And there are many people today that are experiencing darkness, and we can bring light to them. We can make a phone call. We can call someone up. We can join them on Zoom. We can invite them to a shiur on Zoom. We can bring them a challah. We can bring them a latke or a donut. I don't know if that's being so kind, a latke and a donut. Then they have to go on the treadmill after that. But the latkes and the donuts, whatever you go, reach out. Kindness tonight is the focus, and bringing light to people that sit in darkness, and people that are sitting in at home all alone in loneliness and darkness. We have the responsibility to reach out to them and bring them the beautiful light. The light that's represented by milk, the scales on the fish, and many other things that we spoke about. It's all about bringing that kindness. So I wish you a very happy and kind Hanukkah, and we'll see you next week. It's still the middle of Hanukkah, so we'll continue next week. We have more to talk about and more Kabbalistic insights. And we're going to go from this mitzvah, we're going to go to some other mitzvahs, and so we look forward to seeing you all. Okay?
Thank you.
Happy Hanukkah.
Wonderful
L'chaim,
class,
l'chaim,
Rabbi.
l'chaim.
Thank you so much. Have some to you, your family, and everybody.
Amen. Amen.
Happy Hanukkah to
If
everybody.
anyone has any questions, you're welcome to ask.
Have some questions.
Okay. Okay. All the best. Take
Thank
care.
you. All the best to
Bye,
everyone.
bye, bye.
Bye-bye. Freilich and Young.
Bye bye. Shabbat shalom.